Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Good morning, good beautiful morning from Eretz Israel, from the city of Jerusalem. My name is Andrea Simintov, and you are listening to Pull Up a Chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. A lively week in Israel, an incredibly lively week, a busy week, and we're going to share things. I know that I've been accused of being very, very funny, very, very lighthearted. I'm not sure how lighthearted we're going to be today because some very hefty things have happened in this past week, things that we have to share, things that we have to talk about, and we may be a little bit sparse with the yucks. Okay, I'm waiting to hear soon. I am going to give all our greeters from around the world, but I am telling you now, unless you are a friend of Israel, unless you are a friend of the Jewish people, unless you have the respect and compassion and humility to listen to a program coming out of Israel, taking it at face value, then if you cannot adhere to those rules, the rules of my heart, the rules of my commitment to this station and to the blessings of this land, go log out now, because today we're going to talk about the Jewish soul that seems to be under siege from those who mask themselves as friends. Unacceptable. What is she talking about? Oh boy, are you going to hear more about it afterwards. I do want to tell you in a lighthearted fashion that tonight we are going to be celebrating Lag BaOmer. We'll talk more about that afterwards for those of you who have never heard of it or are vaguely familiar with it or think it's a meal out of a Greek restaurant. No, you're going to hear about it, and it also is my 10th wedding anniversary, and I will explain how we chose Lag BaOmer of all strange dates on the calendar. All right, so I'm happy you tuned in this morning, and again, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy, lovely, and exciting ride. See you on the other side.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we're back. Andrea Simintov, Pull Up a Chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Okay, I hope that you're all listening to me loud and clear. We're playing microphone tag. So, all right, so what we were talking about, welcome back. Oh, I forgot to do the romper room moment and say hello, good morning, very late at night to our friends in the United States listening in. Boker Tov, Eretz Israel. Germany is listening in this morning. Australia, it's late in the day. What is it, like afternoon yet? France is listening in. We're actually going to speak a little bit about some of the events in France. Russia, the Russian Federation is listening in, as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands. Oh, Norway also just popped in. Very, very nice. So I do want to tell you, the chat room, if you're listening live via the radio, the internet streamer, the chat room is open. Please drop me a note, and I will repeat this at other times during the program. If there's something you want to take offline, if you want to talk to me, if you want to know my source material, want to share some thoughts that you're not necessarily comfortable with in the chat room, please drop me a note, Andrea at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Andrea, that's Andrea, and I would be happy to read what's going on in your heart. Okay, I don't leave much unsaid here. So as I said earlier, I kind of intimated, I personally am still suffering from jet lag. I was in the United States for over a month. 1 week of that was like totally unexpected. I got stuck there because I was having so much fun being COVID tested everywhere. I would see strangers and I would say, do you want to stick something up my nostril? Anyway, I spent another week there, and it was really such a blessed week. You can see it came from heaven, because even though I thought that my visit had ended in 3 weeks, the magic of the visit, the magic of being connected to relatives, and indeed my elderly, vibrant mom, that's when it all unfolded. And you just could feel God's presence at every turn. And I do know that the humor department up in heaven is very well staffed. Okay, so what kind of Israel did I come back to? I came back to an Israel that still does not have a government, but whose leaders, and desperate to be leaders, are filling our airways, filling our TV streams, filling the internet with, how can I put this, smarmy rhetoric, whorish promises, and a decided lack of achdut, brotherhood, real caring for those of us who supposedly have put our faith in them. I came back to an Israel where, well, indeed, I and other citizens were assaulted with the shameful demise of the founder of one of our most respected, most illustrious, life-saving institutions. It's left me shaken. It's left me ungrounded. Yesterday, really, without any seeming reason, I kept going to sleep between clients. The fatigue that had infected my heart and my soul, it was palpable. Did you know that sadness and fear indeed weigh a lot? And yet, there's so much to celebrate. First of all, the advent of spring. Tonight and tomorrow night mark for me personally 10 years of holy marriage with my beloved husband. And you know, I share this with you. Don't tell anyone. We actually chose Lag BaOmer to get married. It's a popular day to get married because it's the first date, halachically, according to Jewish law, when we are permitted to get married after celebrating Pesach. But the real reason is because Ronnie and Andrea were so old when we embarked on this second marriage. You know, we were already grandparents. We figured that we could more easily, we couldn't even remember where we had left our toothbrushes. So we could remember Lag BaOmer far better than remembering a regular calendar date. And today is also a wonderful holy day, and I'd like to dedicate this day in honor of the third birthday of my incredible grandson, Yishai Lavi Ben Tal Yerut. He's celebrating his third birthday. And of course, I don't usually open up this show and say, anybody want to send in a birthday greeting? But in this case, he's also having the consequential third birthday, his first haircut today in Johannesburg. All birthdays are indeed momentous. But our Yishai Lavi was born he was born sick, not well. He was born into a world of illness, of hospitalizations, a world of masks and chemotherapy, and oceans of prayer. So for his parents, for his brothers, for his grandparents, for his entire mishpacha, and for everyone who prayed for him, donated to his medical funds over the years, who helped him reach this milestone age of 3. The bracha of his presence indeed belongs to all of you. Okay. But the icing on the let's go back to bed cake for Andrea this week was the unmasking of missionaries in our community. This is not such a chiddush, a big revelation. Missionaries? Missionaries are for Israel. What do you say? Love and marriage? Baby carriage? It's sort of standard stuff. We've been missionaried to and missionaried at forever. Indeed, I have missionaries in my building upstairs. Come to my apartment, walk up 16 steps, knock on the door. You will meet some full-blooded missionaries. The only good part of their story is that they're really bad at it. They stink. They sing on Yom Kippur. They sing like cheerful Israeli folk music. They don't get it. They didn't get the right memos. But anyway, we see missionaries in the malls. I'm sitting right here. Hold on a second, reaching over. I right now have in my fingers, pamphlets that are stuck in our mailboxes in my neighborhood. This one, this crap that's comes from something called the Living Stream Missionary in Anaheim, California. We have the U.S. listening in. If anybody from Living Stream is listening into the show this morning, your stuff stinks. Stay out of my mailbox. Stay out of my neighborhood. It's not new. So why is she going on about it this morning? Because this was a family of missionaries dressed in the garb of Haredi Jews, okay? Haredi Jews. They didn't just dress the part. They lived in Orthodox Jewish communities. They sent their children to our children's schools. Let me just see. He was actually an ordained Christian minister who lied. He lied, shock of shocks. I'm just trying to look here. A lot of my work, a lot of my stuff today is translated from the Hebrew, and my translations aren't so good. But he was a rabbi, a scribe. We call it a sofer stam. He was a moel. He conducted brisim, a circumcision. He conducted marriages, funerals. He was respected. Actually, one of his children, one of the daughters, it may have been the one who actually outed the family, was a classmate of one of my granddaughters. I mean, they shared birthday parties. I think this girl was at our bat mitzvah. It was a shock. I tried to book for the show this morning Sharon Newson, the Holy Sharon Newson. Sharon is the founder of an organization called Beitenu, Our House. It translates to emphasis on the our home. And Sharon is busy. She's inundated. She was on vacation in a lot when the story broke. And she and her organization, as well as other organizations, have been following this family. This family they called, I can actually tell you what their names are now. I think it's El Kohen. He actually said that he's from a priestly line. He's a Kohen. And his wife was a child of Holocaust survivors. The story is so smarmy, so insidious, because they lived among us. And Rabbi Tuvia Singer, the holy Rabbi Tuvia Singer, has an incredible video. Maybe I'll present a link on my show notes today. You'll be able to see it yourselves. And this fellow, Michael El HaKohen, he goes on Christian television in his Haredi garb, and he talks about the headway, the great strides he is making towards infiltrating the souls of the Jews. They lied to investigators. I'm just looking here, some of my notes here. Yes, I told you that one of the girls was a classmate. Again, my friends listening in, and we have a lot of Christian friends who are dear friends and listen into this station. I want to make something clear, but don't get confused and think that this is woke talk, that I'm trying to hedge my bets. I'm giving it to you straight. This is not an anti-Christian diatribe or an anti-Christian campaign. What I am talking about is a declaration of war on deception, on covert intentions of spitting into the faces of those who shelter, share, and help you. Mrs. HaKohen, Amanda, it was her name, was diagnosed and subsequently died from cancer. During this time, members of our community donated, I think, 55,000 shekels to her welfare. They sat with her, they nursed her, they babysat for the children. They did everything all the time under the guise that Mrs. Cohen was a devout Orthodox Jew. So I am telling you that if you are a Christian who believes religious leaders who teach that the road to your salvation is in successfully redeeming the souls of Jews, clean up your own homes. Teach your own children the Noahide laws and oust the deceivers among you who are just plain wrong. Andrea Simantov, guess what? I'll continue on the other side.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with Love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with Love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
Okay, we're back. Andrea Simantov, pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Listen, we keep it real here. If you're hearing the sounds of like garbage trucks backing up, birds on the windowsill, that's because we're still working out of our home studios. And if you only, I wish that you could be sitting on my shoulder and listening to the conversations between Andrea and the engineer in between. Too much fun, too much diatribe. Okay, just to finish up on this story here, again, our friends. You don't come to someone's house and crap in their living room. I don't know. When I was raised, that was sort of a standard rule. You don't come to someone's home and tell them what they're doing wrong and how to live. As my late great Uncle Lou would say, you conduct yourself. Again, a lot of my work as a life coach, and again, I share this with you not to drum up business, but if you want to hire me, you know where to reach me. But anyway, a lot of my work as a life coach is in helping clients unlearn stuff that no longer works for them, unlearn stuff that's bad. And again, if you are part of the world of deceivers, the world that has bought into the crap that your road to redemption is in bringing Jewish souls back to Christ, not only are you just plain wrong, it is time for you to unlearn some really poisonous lessons and uncrown, indeed, uncrown your leaders who no longer merit wearing any kind of mantle called greatness. And that is what I want to tell you too. As a matter of fact, I have to throw this in before I go on to my next diatribe. She's on diatribe mode today. Apparently, we have a local Munza Schmunza store, we call it. One of these schlock stores that sells really cheap goods. It's nice to make Purim packages and Hanukkah gifts. Anyway, they sell this stuff, and they sell a lot of party favors to put into our equivalent of stocking stuffers, or like the Pesach, the Purim baskets, and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, they give out these little mesh bags with little Tanakh Bibles. Well, some very clever listeners were looking through, and they discovered they were messianic. They were messianic Bibles, about an inch by an inch. And this place was just bringing them in. They're all over. Again, my neighborhood in particular, I get this stuff all the time. I get magnets. You messianics, I have to give you credit. Your work is getting better. It's getting more polished. You're speaking the lingo. You obviously have some very well-trained Israelis among you, and you're getting good. But I have to tell you, stay out. My neighborhood in particular is being targeted because we are an underserved neighborhood, undereducated, and definitely under-earning. We are under siege. Stay out. Okay. New topic. Very happy that we have listeners from France living in. The chat room is open. I would love if you listeners from France who are listening in would drop me a note. Let me know if you're Jewish. Let me know if you're not Jewish. Let me know if you are part of the Moroccan community. Let me know what's going on. I'm going to mention, of course, Sarah Halimi. There are people listening in from the States for sure who have never heard of Sarah Halimi. Well, no fancy words can cover up what happened to her. She was murdered. She was beaten. I think she was bludgeoned with a bat. She was thrown out of her window, perhaps still alive. And justice for her murder, for her assailant, was fleeting, perhaps indeed non-existent. Her 27-year-old neighbor, whose name really we shouldn't mention it, so let me whisper it quickly and then you could delete it. His name is this son of a bitch. His name is Kobili Traore. He burst into her apartment while she was sleeping. He knew who she was. She had been kind to him. I think she had done favors for him. She was very beloved in the neighborhood. He beat her. He crushed her skull. He threw her off the bat, all the time shouting. Well, here's a surprise. He was shouting, Allahu Akbar, God is great, and I killed the Shaitan. Shaitan apparently is the Arabic word for Satan. Yes, indeed, you learn everything on this show. So under logic, she lost her life. He didn't even lose his freedom. In December 2019, according to my friend and guru, Liat Collins, in her Jerusalem Post column called Last Words, she brings down that a court ruled that Traore was not criminally responsible because, fasten your seatbelt, boys and girls, he had used a lot of marijuana prior to his psychotic episode, and it compromised his discernment. So instead of asking what the magistrate was smoking when he made the ruling, the highest French Court of Appeals, they all agreed that he couldn't be considered responsible for his action on the night he killed her. You know, I have to tell you, Emmanuel Macron has not proven himself to be a friend of Israel, has not proven himself over time to be a friend of the Jews. And yet, this is how bizarre, how perverted this is. Even French President Emmanuel Macron was shocked by the crime and the non-punishment, and he was quoted as saying, deciding to take drugs and then go crazy should not, in my eyes, remove your criminal responsibility. My friends, Halimi, her life mattered. Her Jewish life mattered. I'm going to tell you, her life matters a hell of a lot more than the life of this creep Atal who killed her. Yes, here's your unwoke information. Some lives do matter more. She was a doctor. She was a giver. She was educated. She was incredible. You know, if the name Halimi is also familiar, there was another brutal murder not long ago, 85-year-old Holocaust survivor in Paris, was it? I'm not sure which city it was. Marielle Knoll. Also, one of her Muslim neighbors beat her to death. Let me see, one other. We also have remember back in 2006, the Parisian Jew Ilan Halimi was beaten by a gang, kept alive and tortured. My friends, it's trite to say, Je suis Sarah Halimi. I am also Sarah Halimi. The hate crimes in Paris, in France, of all of them, the only reason they seem to have gone down is because everybody has been locked inside and quarantined due to COVID. It's coming out. They're coming crawled out of under the woodwork, under the rocks. Anybody in France, I'm going to ask you again, what are you doing there? Don't fix it. Don't repair it. Don't fool yourselves. Come home. Okay. And for those of us who are sitting smugly in America and think we're safe because it can't happen in America, good morning. Open your eyes. We're being inoculated. We're coming out. Consequently, 4 Jewish centers in the Bronx. I don't know if it was just the Bronx or Upper Westchester. Anyway, apparently the Riverdale Jewish Center, the Chabad of Riverdale, Young Israel of Riverdale, and the Conservative Synagogue, Adat Yisrael of Riverdale, were attacked last week, right after my show. My show had nothing to do with it. Also in Westchester, they're being attacked. If you think this has nothing to do with you, oh, it's all about you, the Jew. You are not exempt because you may not observe Shabbos. You are not exempt because you are not one of those kinds of Jews. Hate crimes are on the up. You know what? Asian Americans can tell us what's happening with the hate crimes. Don't think you're safe now, Jews. You are not. Okay, we're going to, as we close up this segment, oh, yeah. By the way, any of you listening in today and think, no, it's okay, we have to give the Palestinians more because then they won't be attacking the Jews. Then they won't be rioting in the cities. It's because it's being treated unfairly. Let me just tell you, from my friend, the delicious Joshua David Washington. I don't know, has Joshua become a minister like his dad? I'm not sure. So he recently posted very succinctly, the Palestinian Authority has been using the most recent, he calls to attention, the U.S. money that the Biden administration just earlier this month restored over $200 million in aid to the Palestinian Authority. Would you like to know where the money is going, everybody? I'll let you know. The bombs have been falling nonstop. The missiles have been raining down on us. That's where your money is going. So be proud of yourselves. Tap yourselves on the back. Oh, if you didn't hear about it, that's because we haven't retaliated yet. And we haven't reopened about the conversation about cutting aid. Remember, there's a program. Keep it in turmoil. Keep it angry. Keep it furious, and keep Israel in the crosshairs of your apartheid discussions. My name is Andrea Simintov. You know what? When we come back, I'm actually going to start the Devar Torah section, with a poem from an Egyptian poet. See you on the other side.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Bentako, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
Okay, we're back. Andrea Simintov, pull up a chair on Israel News Talk Radio. We are here in the famous Devar Torah section. A lot to share, but I came across this beautiful poem that I could not resist. Actually has nothing to do with today's Devar Torah. That's not true. Like a pebble in the ocean, everything connects to everything else. And apparently this is from a young Egyptian poet named Mustafa Ibrahim. And he could not have spoken my heart. Nobody could have spoken my heart more clearly. May you never be the reason why someone who loved to sing doesn't anymore, or why someone who is dressed so uniquely now wears plain clothing, or why someone who always spoke so excitedly about their dreams is now silent about them. May you never be the reason someone gave up on a part of themselves because you were demotivating, non-appreciative, hypercritical, or even worse, sarcastic about it. How could I not have shared that? Thank you. Thank you, Mustafa Ibrahim, for bringing me into my Shabbos and giving me some thoughts about how we can treat one another. Okay, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory writes this week, if you're ever going to subscribe to any kind of Torah reading, any kind of thing to learn, definitely consider, I'm not going to give out the email address because it's too hard, but he has before his death, he left about a year of continuing Divrei Torah, Thoughts of Torah, and his website might be found under something called Covenant and Conversation, the Blessed Rabbi Norman Land. Anyway, in this week's, I just pulled out one section, really jumped at me, and I hope that you appreciate it as much as I do. We were in the Parsha Emor this week, and Rabbi Norman Lamb, the former director of Hebrew University, Yeshiva University in New York. He was the chancellor for many years. So he tells an amusing story of Mendel the waiter. So when the news came through to a cruise liner, if you remember back in 1976, about the daring Israeli raid on Entebbe, the passengers were so excited. I mean, this was very exciting stuff. We have like 100 Entebbe films out there. Some of them even star Forrest Whitaker. Anyway, the passengers, the primarily non-Jewish, I think all non-Jewish passengers, wanted to pay tribute in some way to Israel and the Jewish people. So a search was undertaken to see if there were any Jewish members on board of the ship. So only one Jew could be found. Are you ready? Mendel the waiter. So I'm sorry, I'm already laughing. And, we always have a Mendel the waiter in many of our stories. Okay, so at a solemn ceremony, the captain of the cruise liner, on behalf of all of the passengers, offered deep congratulations to Mendel, who suddenly found himself elected de facto as the ambassador of the Jewish people. We are all, like it or not, ambassadors of the Jewish people, and how we live, how we behave, how we treat others, according to Rabbi Sachs. Of course, I've gone off script, as you can well tell. It doesn't only God of Israel. Quoting Shakespeare in Twelfth Night, Rabbi Sachs says, "Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and others have greatness thrust upon them." Throughout history, Jews have had greatness thrust upon them. As the late Milton Himmelfarb wrote, the number of Jews in the world is smaller than a small statistical error in the Chinese census, yet we remain bigger than our numbers. Big things seem to happen all around us. It really behooves us to understand that Shakespeare was right. And he defied the challenge. Be not afraid of greatness. A great leader, whoever we are, whether we lead a nation or whether we lead the family around us, we have a responsibility to be an ambassador and to inspire our people to be ambassadors as well. Indeed, my friends, I just realized that that's what I'm also alluding to when I talk about our Christian friends who claim to love us. Be ambassadors among the Christians. Treat us with respect. Treat us with kindness. And don't change us. Celebrate the difference. And everybody accept and excel in our roles. Okay, That's that. All right, so we are admonished. You have Jews in the room, why not admonish them? Okay, we are admonished in Vayikra not to profane the holy name of Hashem, but to sanctify his name. Isn't that what we're talking about? Being ambassadors, whether it be in our four walls or outside. The Rambam is quoted in Love Your Neighbor, wonderful book, actually page 317 if you're taking notes. And he comments that there are other things that are a profanation of God's name. When a pious Torah scholar does things which cause people to talk against him, even if the acts themselves are not transgressions, he profanes God's name. If a Torah scholar will be careful about his behavior, however, will speak pleasantly to people, act friendly to them, receive them with a pleasant facial expression, will refrain from retorting when he's insulted, will honor those who treat him with disdain, will be honest in business dealings, will constantly devote himself to Torah study, will indeed go beyond the letter of the law and will avoid extremes, exaggerations, and he will be praised and beloved. And others will desire to emulate him. This man has sanctified God. Can any of you relate? I know that this gives me a lot to think about for sure. The younger generation, they are notoriously defiant when it comes to accepting advice from elders. I'm thinking about this a lot because I spent a lot of time this last month figuratively at the foot of my mother, who has almost a century of life, under her belt. But, younger people feel, and a lot of times it's correct, that they're entitled to make their own mistakes. But that attitude only increases the level of pain that making these errors is all about. Every generation feels that its challenge is greater than those of previous times. I know we have cups of coffee together. My husband and I say, would we want to bring children into the world today? I don't know. We're happy in a sense that we won't be around in another 200 years to see. But didn't our forefathers feel the same way? A little reflection, a lot of tradition, a ton of patience, a strong family structure. These are great and usually the necessary ingredients for success for our next generation. They're not guarantees. The Talmud teaches us that there are irrational factors. Good fortune, mazal, we call it. That's always present when it comes to raising, the kids. Nevertheless, we're also taught that we are not freed from the obligation to attempt to succeed, no matter how unlikely that success might be. Taking advice from the older generation, it's not always, desired, but I have to tell you, it's always influential. The influence is vital for the continuity of family life, especially my favorite subject, the continuity of Jewish family life. A parent remains a parent throughout his or her lifespan. It's a generational connection that is the basis for our survival. Okay, what else do I want to share with you? Very much. Oh yeah, pollution. Pollution in Torah? Yeah. This week's portion talks a lot about the impurities of human society. Indeed, my friend, we have spent a year being masked, covering our mouths, keeping away from dreaded viruses that 14 months ago we never even heard about. But the pollution referred to in our Torah reading is different entirely. It concerns itself with the impurity that comes from death and not from life, from sin, not performing good deeds. It prohibits the priestly descendants of Aaron from willfully rendering themselves to be impure. It's a matter of ritual law, but it's also a matter of value systems and personal and societal outlooks. It really made me think a lot about the technological achievements of our time, but how wearing a mask over our nose and our mouths might prevent the air pollution and the COVID pollution from entering us. but the need for spiritual masks seems to be a lot greater in these times. Okay, Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer. All right, let me see. What are we going to say about that? People take, a man, about compassion. We talk a lot about compassion on this show. I came across, in honor of Lag BaOmer, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. I talk a lot about him. He says, a man is not truly compassionate until his joy at his neighbor's good fortune is as great to him, as important to him, as his compassion at his neighbor's misfortune. Lag BaOmer commemorates something that was negative, but something that celebrates freedom, emancipation, and an end to that which would destroy us. Andrea Simintov, Shabbat Shalom.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.